Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About Cuba. Today, we have a very special guest, and as every week, I try to bring you people that are. I want to show you what real life is in Cuba, and today we're going to talk to uh, a researcher of psychology for the University of Havana, Dr. Humberto Miranda Lorenzo. Um, it's with great honor because that he's with us today. He is currently in Mexico with his family, visiting his family, and I had the pleasure of meeting up with him. We are actually friends. We've been friends for quite a couple of years now. We've actually had a couple of conferences together, and we've seen each other, and we've held a great relationship. And one of the things that I want to bring up today is how you can have different points of view politically. And this is an important, I think this is important, especially in today's world and what we're living in, not just about my country of Cuba, but what we're living worldwide. We each have different points of view ideologically, but we can still have a friendly conversation with respect and and listening to each other. And I think these debates need to be done. We need to be able to sit with our friends and collaborate and debate in all types of things and even politically. Sometimes I hear a lot of people saying, if you want to have friends, don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics. I beg to differ. I think we can all talk about politics and we can all talk about everything because as long as we respect each other and as long as we listen to one another, I don't see a reason why not. So, without further ado, I am going to bring up my friend. Hello, Humberto. How are you?
Hello, happy
Thank
to
you
see you. No,
so much.
thank you for inviting me.
I am, yeah,
I
it's been a while since we saw each
I
other,
was
last time. I think the last time we saw each other, it was when we went to Cuba and we went to visit you. Um, I don't remember if it was the last time that we went to Georgia. I'm not sure. I know we've seen each other in different places and in different opportunities, and we have a great relationship. And I am so glad that you just took my invitation and decided to be with us today. I it was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you. Another one of the other reasons why I wanted to have you, not just because you're a wonderful person and I think you're great and you have a great intake on what is happening in today's Cuba. But another reason is because I saw your masterclass a couple of weeks back that you had, and I love the analogy that you did about you named it your masterclass the perfect storm. Um, and you actually I love the analogy that you did between what a perfect storm, what it takes for a perfect storm to come together, and how that is the same that's what's happening in today's Cuba. um, so I would love to hear have you expand a little bit on our current situation in Cuba. What is happening? A lot of people don't understand um, the reasons why this is happening, what is happening, and where are we today with Cuba. Give us a little bit of background on this. Hello, Umberto, are you there? Oh, I think we froze. I might have
um,
to.
yeah, I'm here. It seems like yeah, there's a kind of
It's a,
glitch and
a
some pauses in the transmission.
okay. I am so sorry. But first of all, so before we get into the actual debate and the actual conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you've done throughout these years in the last professionally, and what are you doing currently?
Sorry, I lost the last part of your question.
Okay. So the question was, what have you been doing professionally throughout these years, and what are you currently doing?
Okay, I'll try to be brief, which is difficult for a Cuban. Uh,
We understand.
we don't know how to be brief. First of all, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. We've been friends for 7 years now. We met in 2014 in Charleston. I
Yes.
remember and this is part of what I do.
Yeah.
Uh, I used to run study abroad programs between U.S. universities and my institution in Cuba
Hmm.
for almost 20 years, since 2000, and actually more than 20 years. And I've been doing that in the College of Charleston for 16 years, and in the University of Rhode Island, where I still am a visiting professor, and also in the Georgia Southern University, in the school in Savannah, in Georgia. I think that was the last time we met.
Yes.
Um,
I agree.
yeah. Particularly, I mean, it was happy for me or seeing you that year when I was honored with the key of the city of Savannah by the
Yes.
mayor because of what all the exchange and what we have done. Again, I've been a researcher, social researcher, for 36 years now. And yeah, for many years, I've been coming back and forth in the US, and coming back to the beginning, that provided me with the opportunity to meet you and Guillermo, your husband, and your family, which I feel privileged for that.
Oh, thank you. We're privileged to have you as a friend as well.
So yes, this is pretty much what I've been doing in the last 25 years or so.
So, uh, of course, we all know what happened on July
Okay.
11th. We all I think there's a delay, and we're having it, and I hope that you can hear me well.
Yeah,
Okay. Go ahead. I'm
I
not
do.
going to interrupt anymore. Is there's I just have to wait for the timing.
Um, and I really like what you said in your introduction, because it's a global problem to be
Yeah.
in this polarization and points of view.
Mhm.
People like hating each other for thinking differently. Um, my perspective is that, I mean, going to the US and making so many friends there, meeting people who think differently in the way I do, but very good human beings and very good friends. What matters, what counts, is what you do, not what you think. And
Right.
this is a principle we need to establish, And I think this is something that have worked between you and I, between you, Guillermo, and me. It doesn't matter the way we think. What matters, what counts, is how good friends we could be, and what uh, how can we help each other
Right.
at a time, regardless the way we think. And on the other hand, um, that is a matter of principle, because we both want something good for our people, and
Right.
and that's very important for me. I like to feel that in people when they want good things. I may be we maybe disagree in this and that, but most important thing when I see somebody else
Oh, I lost him. Again, we apologize. It's there is a delay. He is in Mexico, so we're gonna have to be a little bit patient. Humberto, I think I lost you. I wonder if it would be better for you to come out and get back in.
okay,
Do you think I lost
here we
every?
are.
I lost everything you just said. Unfortunately, you froze up. It nothing. I we couldn't hear a thing. You were completely frozen. But I did under. We did get up to the fact that you we're both we both have different points of view, but the fact is that we both love our country. We want the best for our people. I think I think we have more in common than we have of other things that we don't have in common. So, what the perspective that I give people is try to find things that you have in common. And then the things that you don't have in common, it's okay. You can talk about them. We can debate on them, but you don't have to get upset and you don't have to scream at anybody. And, I have seen actually families come apart, and not talk to each other because of political ideology, and that is wrong, absolutely wrong. Um, you know, so so how the perfect storm. Talk to us a little bit about this analogy, which I loved, by the way.
Well, like I said in the class, Cuba is heated by storms all every year, many storms, and there have been I mean, we have created sort of a DNA to analyze and protect from. A few days ago, there was a earthquake here in Mexico. Of course, I was kind of scared. My friends and everybody who lived here, they were like natural. They acted completely natural because they're used to it.
Right.
So we Cubans, we are used to the storms, and we know exactly what is the perfect storm. Is when the weather, I mean, when the ocean around the Caribbean Sea and so get very hot, when the atmospheric pressure goes down, uh, when the winds start crossing. I mean, there are signs that announce the perfect storm,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting. This guy Jose Rubiera, which is an icon for the Cubans in times of storm, the guy looks like happy when he's talking about that because in his specialty as a meteorologist,
Right.
he can see every aspect of a storm.
Right.
So for me, as such a researcher, what
Mm-hmm.
happened in the last period in Cuba seems very much to a perfect storm because there are too many factors acting together
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously at the same time. And I like the analogy because
Oh, I lost you again, unfortunately.
okay, we came back again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I said that I like the analogy because one one big mistake, so to speak. I don't know if I could use another word. Maybe there is a better word to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the mistakes is to focus just in one aspect or in one group of aspects. We need to see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
There are too many things. I mean, I like to emphasize in the aspects that are happening inside the island,
Mm-hmm.
things that are currently happening in Cuba deficits in terms of structure, organization, all that. But
Mhm.
I cannot ignore everything what is happening
Outside.
outside.
Mhm.
Um, I was today. I was watching the news here. Actually I checked three different sources, and everybody were talking about the pandemic crisis in Argentina, Colombia, and even in the U.S.
Mhm.
The pandemic is global, it's affecting everybody, and it's having tremendous impact elsewhere. In
Mhm.
each country, it has its own ways to be manifested, and in each country, it has specific ways of having impacts in the population. But
Agree.
it's a global issue I cannot ignore at the time of
Right.
knowing what is happening in Cuba.
Mhm.
Uh, it is true that at some point the Cuban official medias are not uh, giving all the reality together and all the information. They're not releasing all the information. Okay, and that is another aspect of the storm.
Right.
People now have access to all to other sources of information. So if you don't tell me what is happening, I will find out from another way.
Right.
Um, this global issue of the pandemic comes together with both a very strong uh, tightening, a new turn of sanctions by the U.S., but
Mhm.
also is accompanied by an exhausting economic model. Is already exhausted.
Right.
You know, I remember, like in 2005 or so,
Mhm.
maybe before, Fidel Castro himself, he said that this system doesn't work even for us. So at some point,
But
there
you
are
admit it.
structural changes that need to be carried
Right.
out.
Right.
And on the other hand, there are new generations grown in the middle of the crisis. I mean, my generation grew up in a country that was growing at the same time somehow,
Right.
because the access to education, healthcare, and welfare
Right.
was kind of a thing that you could have an idea of a future.
Right.
And you felt, I mean, my generation in many ways felt included in the project.
Right.
Was We felt that we were part of the project. With the crisis in the 90s, that we Cubans are very good at euphemisms, and then it was economic crisis, but we call it special period.
Right.
And that was smart because it doesn't have a limit in time. A crisis, you have to put an end. A special period, you don't know when, you know when begins, but you
It,
don't know when it's gonna end.
right.
Uh, but there are three generations. I mean, I have three children
Right. Yeah.
in different generations: 37, 30, and 26. The
Yeah.
three of them grew up in a country that was not growing with them,
Right.
and their perceptions about what happened in Cuba and their idea of a future
Right.
is completely different than the one in my generation.
Yeah.
And it is another aspect of the storm.
Agreed.
Young people that are completely unsatisfied and asking for different ways different ways of doing things, you know. And it's very symptomatic that the immigration rate in Cuba is
Has
now
grown.
stable, like almost 50,000 a year,
Right.
and more than 60% is between 15 and 49 years old.
Hmm.
And
Right. Yeah.
it's
Which is
symptomatic.
Yeah, which is a shame, you know, and I, you know, we've talked about this, me and my husband, and you know, that new generation that grows once, I mean, once they reach a certain age, instead of looking for changes within the country, because they feel that they can't make those changes, they have you know found ways to immigrate, and it's unfortunate because now we have the elders are left behind, and of course, but I think obviously this year, due to the fact that not too many people were able to immigrate, due to the fact that we had the COVID going on, and obviously, SOS Cuba started because of the collapse in the hospitals, and this evolved into the July 11th protest, obviously, um, and I think at this point, I've been in touch with a lot of the younger generations. I'm in touch with people inside Cuba daily, so I know what is happening, firsthand. And the younger generation now that went out, that protested, they feel now that they want to make a change. They want to stay and they want to be heard. Um, but I feel, that this, of course, this government is not listening. What do you think?
Well, first, Cuban society is very diverse right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Part of the mistakes in the approaches about Cuba by the Cuban government and by other regions is not to perceive the diversity of social actors in Cuba.
Right.
The economic reforms brought in 1994 changed the scope of the Cuban economy, and with that came along with a lot of different social and economic actors, people working for foreign firms, people with their own businesses, running their own businesses, people working in different sectors of the economy. I mean, it's the Cuban society have diversified a lot.
Right.
We cannot keep the same approaches of the Cuba of the 80s or 70s,
And the
and this is
internet,
one thing.
yeah, I think the internet has also played you know, a big impact on what's on today's generation as well. Obviously, they have information at their fingertips, you know, where I'm sure that when you were growing up, that was not the case. So it's a big difference between uh, generation 20 years ago to today's generation. I believe that.
Yeah, actually, new generations, and this is something I debate with my children all the time. Um, when I was studying in the University of Havana, in order to be in the average, I have to read at least 3 books a week and a lot of articles. I mean, really read and have a lot of information.
Right.
Live, you don't download live with a click, and this is part of the Cuban diversity.
Right.
There is a Cuban in the networks,
That's the
and
network.
sometimes both parties are confusing which Cuba we're talking about. I am again. This is a daily live conversation with my children. It's not something, uh,
Correct.
and once in a week I have to remind them something that happened in the ancient Greek. There was a very famous professor, Zenon of Abdera. He used to create a paradoxes, and it happened when the infinite number was discovered. So he created the paradox of and because when you move from point A to point B, you have to reach the middle point, And for that, you have to read another middle point and another middle point. And since the numbers are infinite, the movement didn't exist. That was the major hypothesis for him. He actually was teaching that for years in the University of Athens until one day there was a young guy who walked from the end of the classroom to him, slapping in the face, and said, "The movement does exist."
Right.
Because reality could go beyond the perception. Now,
Right.
there are a lot of crossing realities. We cannot ignore any of them,
Right.
but too many realities are living together.
Mm-hmm.
And there is one structural thing. I try to not to personalize
Mm-hmm.
because my major point is to change the society. Thinking that uh, centering all the blame in one person or one institution, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
There are structural problems in Cuba because I can change right now. I could change the one in charge,
Yeah. That's
and let's put another one. If you
right.
don't change the system,
Right.
okay, so
Mm-hmm.
there are systemic issues there
Mm-hmm.
that prevents that those who are ruling can listen
Right.
exactly what is happening. It's like they're in a bubble.
Yeah.
At least, and this is a big difference with those who make the revolution before. We could talk about leaders, we like it or not, and now
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about officers.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely different.
Right.
Okay, there is no leadership in that,
Right.
and the structure prevents the massive people's participation in the decision making process. So I
Right.
think that right now, I mean, the protests of July 11 mainly was a sign of a. I mean, we're well, we need that.
Mm-hmm.
Cuban people need that. And let me tell you this: when I talk about Cuban people, I doesn't make any distinction between those who are living in the island and those who live abroad,
Right.
because I mean my studies have put me in a very interesting place. Jose Marti was interesting because he talked about homeland.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't talk about nation.
Right.
And when he said homeland is humanity, he
Mm-hmm.
was talking about all the Cubans spread out around the
Right.
world. He
Great.
himself, he spent 15 years of his life living in the monster.
Right.
Uh,
As he called.
and he fought for the Cuban independence. He loved his homeland. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a concept of a homeland which is more flexible, expanded, and it this relation very existentialist of nation and immigration, and immigrants should help the island now. Is I think one of the part of the crisis now and part of the storm had to
Mm-hmm.
do with the relationship. Um, the migratory laws in Cuba must be changed. The way um, actually is an exercise of citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that Cubans should have a passport, a Cuban passport, perfect. But what is it good for? I don't think that it's necessary to go and travel abroad. Okay, you're an American citizen now. You can travel everywhere. But
Right.
in terms of participation in the decision making process in Cuba, it's important that you carry your passport. You're a Cuban citizen. You have to be
Right.
welcome in your homeland. Okay,
Yeah.
and I
But
think
not everyone.
this is another.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Not everyone is welcomed. As a matter of fact, me and my husband, unfortunately, we have been uh, what they call it, how they call it, restricted, basically, from going back into the island because of our way of express the way we express ourselves on social media against that ideology and that government. So it's not just us. Obviously, we've seen this throughout in many people. The doctors get banned for about 8 years. They can't go back in once they leave. We've seen young people try to go back into the island, and they've been stopped. We've had people kept inside the island for months at a time, where international organizations had to get involved in order for them to be released. So it's not that's for me, that is a human rights um you know issue, because it is one of the human rights, international human rights, is that we have freedom of movement. We should be able to leave and come back and be allowed back into our country, because the country doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to the people. you know and how a government can control, and I understand if you're controlling people from other countries coming into your island, I understand that. But people that were born as Cubans, they're Cuban nationals. How are you allowed to control who goes in and who goes out? That to me is obviously, not good.
Yeah, again, I think because one of the things I've learned in all these years coming back and forth is that um, Cuban history is very short, has been very intense, very intense. When you sum up all the events from 1868 to July 11 is too much in a very short period of time.
Great.
That intensity was even greater in the last 60 years.
Right.
And it has affected the personal history of everybody.
Correct.
I mean, everybody has a rupture. Many people, I mean, rip out because, on the other hand, something so natural as immigration was turned in a political commodity for both sides. I mean, I had in Key West, in the Cuban Museum of Key West, there is a picture of my grandpa who used to go back and forth to the U.S. in the first half of the 20th century. He used to play baseball in both sides, working in tobacco factories in Key West, and it was the most natural thing in the world. The one of the wounds we need to heal. Yeah, when I say we, it's all the Cubans together.
Right.
Okay, regardless any political position, is about to heal
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm. I
I
agree.
remember I have a friend leave the island in 1980 when the Maria.
Mm-hmm.
He was discriminated because of his sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, he didn't have to do anything with that.
Right.
But when I met him in 1998, he was a professor at the College of Charleston. I heard his personal story.
Right.
I didn't I didn't have to do anything with what happened to you, but I'm very sorry and I want to apologize. You at least you deserve that.
Mhm.
And I think it's a big step that
Mhm.
authorities in Cuba have to take. Two mistakes, two wrongs don't make a
So right.
right.
I
Okay,
agree.
so right now, there are things, of course, those who have, okay, there are things.
Oh, I lost you again. I'm so sorry.
No, it's just that we don't need to forget. We need to forgive and
Right.
move on,
Right.
because we need to build a country together. Um,
Hmm.
because on the other hand, one lesson for all those who have a political position and putting pressure in the hatred, in the confrontation, is, you know what, I can forgive. Okay, me
Right.
personally, I've learned to do that. My part of my best friends, they live in the US, they live in Florida, including you and Guillermo. But I have friends who grew up with me since we were kids, you know.
Right. Yes.
And and I never lost the reason to love them because they're my friends.
I
And
agree.
we have developed a very close tie,
Right.
and it's an example that we Cubans can understand each other regardless the way we think. You know, it's there is an objective. We need to create a better Cuba. For that, even for the government to feel the pressure,
Right.
we need to get together. Okay, and
Yes.
uh, and then things will change for better.
I agree. I mean, there's, and I think people are starting to, I've seen a big wave of people coming together, especially during the July 11th protest. I don't know if you were able to see some of the protests that we had here nationally, and internationally, all over the world. Cubans came together, and and because they saw hope, they saw that, you know, the people from inside were starting to do something about it, because a lot of us, and I include myself, when we go to Cuba, we get, people tell us how bad things are, you know? So we know, when we would go, we would understand how bad things were. Obviously, we were seeing it as well. When you talk to your family, and I know every Cuban out there has this, you talk to your family and they are continuously telling you all the bad things that are happening, everything that they're going through, all the struggles they're going through. And to us, it's like, okay, but why aren't you doing anything about it? you know? So when we saw the July 11th protest, we said, well, now they're doing something. Now we have to, be by their side. We have to protest with them. And we came together. I think it was a wonderful time. And I think we're still there. I think, I see people all over social media. They're all coming together, and that's why I think it's important to have these conversations, because regardless of, you know how I feel about the embargo versus how you feel about the embargo, you know the the fact is that there is a humanitarian issue right now in Cuba. The fact is that, I'm all for sending medications and food right now because our people need it. We are all humans and we need to help each other. And, that I think that's the only way we're going to get to a better place. Now, um, how do you think, going forward, and of course, this is only, a hypothesis, right? Going forward, I don't. Do you think this has? there is a change back, do you think people are going to be okay with just being how they were before?
Uh, well, in the class, I responded a couple of questions about that. I again, I insist in bringing the complexity of what is happening in Cuba. There is no, I don't think, I mean, the government, for example, the first reaction of the government to the protests in 11 July was tagging all the protests as counter-revolutionary, anti-government, promoted by imperialism and so on. The same way the media, as opposed to the government, they portrayed a very homogeneous image about everybody were exactly asking for the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, that is wrong. That is not an actual reflection of the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, I mean, one thing in common is that people are discontent.
Right.
People are very unhappy, and of course, if you're having problems, I mean, for years with electricity, food, any like even healthcare, the education, etc. When you see your surroundings deteriorating and the daily life, I think that one of the most important aspects, decisive, is the daily life. For Cubans, daily life is awful, it's difficult, it's tough, it's a struggle all the way. And in that, I mean, it's a permanent stage that get people angry and unsatisfied, unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
I think July 11 was a like a explosion of unhappiness, and people were like really angry, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And on the other hand, traditionally, the governmental structures in Cuba uh, turned the protest into something wrong, evil, and even criminalized the protest. So the reaction by the government was wrong, was tagging everybody in the same side and putting people in prison and repressing the protests. That was completely wrong, because not everyone were protesting for the same.
Mm-hmm.
But even one of the positive side effects is, first of all, protest is the most normal thing anywhere,
Yeah.
because government have to serve to the king. The king is the people.
Mm-hmm.
You you're there because of the people, so you have
Yeah.
to serve the people. And when the
Mm-hmm.
people is not satisfied with that, go and protest and tell you, okay, this is wrong.
Right.
In any country in the world, you see that. And right now, I don't care if, I mean, of course, I do care, but for me, it's not the most important thing that the Chilean government is repressing people. The thing is, you have to protest when you are insatisfied, when you don't feel okay with the situation. And particularly in the case of Cuba, when the government, when you don't have any ways to interact with the government, you don't
Right.
have any ways to question, okay, an
Your authority.
officer of the government, an official of the government does something wrong, and people doesn't have the way to say, hey, come here, you have to. There is not a system of rendering accounts, real rendering accounts,
Right.
and say,
Right. No
um,
no accountability. Mm-hmm.
yes. And I think that more and more it will become normal. When things are not working okay, people will go to the street and say, look, I completely disagree. I have two very positive examples because in 2016, I think, the storm Irma
Mhm.
crossed over the island, or the part of the island, destroyed many sides of the island, but it didn't impact too much in Havana. But there were a lot of sectors in the city without electricity.
Right.
So in the neighborhood of Santo Suarez,
Hmm.
people went to the street. They were not protesting against the government. They say, why we don't have electricity?
Right.
The first reaction of the government was to send these elite troops to anti-disturbance or whatever.
Hmm.
But you know what? There was no blood in the street. There was nothing, and people, authorities had to understand that people were angry. What is the reason why I don't have electricity here?
Right.
So half hour later, the problems was solved. The other example is in a community in the province of Holguin, in the
Hmm.
municipality of Baguanos.
Hmm.
The some maybe wise person decided to shut down the sugar mills, half of the sugar mills in Cuba.
Hmm.
Um, it was crazy because there
Right.
were many options to do before doing that. But the thing is, in that municipality in Baguanos, in Holguin, the sugar mill was the way of life for that community. And they
Right.
completely disagree with the shutdown. They decided to close the roads. Uh, even they did something interesting because they came. There was a group of poets coming with poems and so on. They dressed the children in their uniforms of pioneers.
Hmm.
They say, we want revolution, but we don't want our sugar mill shut down.
Right.
They were not against the government. They were not against that. They didn't want their sugar mill shut down. You know what? Every year, my friend is a poet, Rolando Bellido. He emailed me every single year. My friend, this year, the sugar mill is working. So they're examples of when people go and protest,
Hmm.
things must change. And I think there is a normalization of the protests, of the protest. I think there is a process of that. And second, the government have to listen, pay attention, and learn the lesson
Right.
because there will be enough repressive forces to stop the people when they decide to. That's enough.
So, on that point, here in the United States, as you know, in order for us to protest, so when I have a group, and I've done protests downtown Charleston, and what I have to get a permit. So, if I have more than 25 people in one public space, I have to go to the city or the county of where that space is, and I fill out an application, and I go through the process of getting an actual permit to have a protest in that public space, because as we know, this public space doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the community. So it must be shared, and so we go through the process of getting an application. Do you foresee this in the future of Cuba at any time?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Right now, first of all, the darkest moments are exactly before the sunrise. Okay, and I think because at some point the rationality has to be. I mean, at some point you have to work. You have to work with the force of the reason, not with the reason of the force.
Right.
And I think think the rationality will come to place. First of all, there is a process of normalization of the protest. You know that people are going to protest. You better organize it. I mean, if you are a smart government, you try to
Right.
organize it and channel this protest in the best way. As far as I know, actually the government is having meetings with scientists, with journalists. That was a very famous meeting with journalists in YouTube and so on. It was like 2 hours of a cast. Regardless the reactions, the cross reactions about what happened there. Um, I mean, I try to. Again, sorry for being so persistent in that. In ancient Greek,
Mm-hmm.
they created their philosophy, and philosophy was love for the wisdom. And
Right.
Aristotle used to say that he was afraid that love for the wisdom, I mean philosophy, um, is converted into philodoxa, which is the love for opinions, which
Right.
is completely different from the knowledge and wisdom. So, regardless the opinions I can have about a meeting, I have to see a reality. It's a good step. It's
Right.
the first time the government meets with journalists and have to face what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, there was a meeting with a group of young people, not exactly those who the government likes to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another step. And it's a sign that the protest has a value, has a very important weight at the time of decision making. You know now that people will go to street and will act against you if you don't listen to them.
Right. Now, when the 27, and I think the when you talked about when you're talking about the previous outburst with the younger generation was the 27N. But this was back in November, and you know we did see them. They 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 went peacefully in front of the ministry of
Culture.
arts, culture. Okay, right. Um, and it was a peaceful protest. They went there. A couple of them went in because they were negotiating, and they asked them to go in. Now the terms were that they were going to get a response in a few days, and the since that government never responded, they went back, and of course, then things, as we saw, turned violently. When I saw the first few, you know, scenes of the July 11th, um, the protests were pretty peaceful. People were not, they were not being vandalizing things. They were just on the streets, and they were chanting whatever they were chanting, and they were going peacefully on the street. Things started turning when the police, of course, came out to aggravate people, and of course, then we also saw, what uh, Diaz Canel said about the revolutionaries taking on the streets, and I think that made people more angry because in a lot of the comments that I saw, where how can he turn Cubans against Cubans, was the terms people were using. And of course, this made, I think it just flared up. Instead of bringing things down and calming things, it just made an explosion. It made things worse. People, were started to actually, you know, I saw a hate against, you know, Diaz Canel himself and the government, what they were doing. and rightfully so, because you should not put your own people against your own people at any time. So um, that's my take on this. And again, I could be wrong, but I think it was just not. I don't believe it's. I don't believe I'm wrong, because I don't think it's the right way of putting this together. I mean, honestly, you as a government, you need to learn. You need to know how to you know bring bring things down instead of flaming it up. And as of today, actually this morning, I got an update. There have been 982 people detained, out of which 456 have been liberated, and 526 people are still in prison because of the protest on July 11th. Um, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. And again, I go back to human rights violations, because I see violations over and over and over again. And I know there are people that are still for that government, that still want that direction, but I beg to differ that most Cubans today um, are seeing that their rights are being violated, and they definitely want that to change in the future.
Well, I respect that. We part of our friendship relation and the respect for what the other thinks, And I don't think I have all the information. I try to have as much information as possible, but I don't think I could never have all the information. I think again, we agree in something. I don't think the first reaction of the government was the best possible reaction. First of all, I could agree that in the term that the revolutionary government, Cuba has a revolutionary government, perfect. But you're the government of all the Cubans, regardless they support the revolution or not. Particularly because today the definitions about what is the revolution are very like blurry. You don't know exactly when you mention revolution or a word like socialism. It's very funny because I see people reacting very angry against the word. Actually, it's not very well defined. It's not exactly defined, even by those who defend it.
Right.
And one thing you have to have clear is the definitions that you start over. And so the reaction by the government was not the best one. I mean, I think it was completely wrong, very like arrogant, and even the in terms of communication, it was. I mean, the advisors the guy has are very bad. He has the worst advisors he could afford, because I mean the treatment of the image is very wrong. It's bringing the whole opposite effect that he wants to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So the first reaction by the government was not okay, was not the best one. Um, I think that think things could be handled in a very completely different way. Try to calm down everybody. Try to first of all, I mean that is one thing that most of the Cubans would agree: the integrity of the island. I mean, the integrity of the nation, the integrity of the territory. Let's preserve it, and for that we need to calm down.
Right.
Let's create a commission in order to hear everybody. Uh, let's calm down, and calm down, and give the order to the police and the military forces to calm down people, to bring calm, not to
Right.
react in that way. So I completely agree with that. What I could see in another in a different way is that, I mean, this thing of confronting Cubans against the Cuban is not just a patrimony of the Cuban government. I mean, their forces, I mean, there is a battery of YouTubers, influencers, etc., that the whole speech, the whole narrative is a narrative of hatred. It is, you are with me or against me. I recently was invited to integrate a new site for the Cubans. I won't mention the name. I was watching for a week. The narrative was completely like let me tell you an example. I mean, I remember when I studied in the times of very pro-Soviet mentality, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I remember even my professors at the university encouraged the students to find other. I mean, some professors, not all of them, I have to say that, but some of them who are really appreciate, and I still have a lot of estimation for them. They encourage the students to go in and find other Cuba. I remember that I learned about Jorge Mañach when I was a student, and I could read all his books, the most controversial kind of books, and so my mind. I mean, Einstein used to say, the mind is like a parachute. It just works if it is open.
Right.
What I'm seeing now is not just by the Cuban government, but also people who are confronting the Cuban government. They're very like we want the land harassed. We don't want to hear anything about anyone in the left, etc. That's why I like that. I like to talk to you, because it doesn't matter the way. I mean, how far could our ideologies be?
Right.
I mean, we're tolerant. We have open-minded people.
Right.
So the hatred has been fueled in many ways, not just the Cuban government. And again, look, I remarked that the reaction of the Cuban government was completely wrong. I completely disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You have to calm down, people, and you have to understand that people are angry for some reason, not just because someone is puffing up in your ear things about you. No, it's just that you're doing something that is getting people angry.
Right.
Okay? In my class, I mentioned a lot of structural problems. They're problems of a system. Okay? There are systemic problems in Cuba that must be corrected and changed, because the society, the Cuban society as a living organism, is going to die. It's ill. So we need to heal it. We need to cure that. And the only way is bringing Cubans together. I completely disagree with any approach that separates Cuban, coming from the government or coming from anybody else. And I think, again, there are lessons coming up from the Cuba is no longer a monolith.
Mm-hmm.
Even Florida, with all the Cubans, is not monolithic.
Of course not.
There's a very diverse kind of thinking and approaches. So it's also with Cuba. And I think the closest approaches to reality are those who understand the diversity of subjects and agendas in Cuban people.
I agree.
It's true that there are people like I like sometimes the term is funny, because we're very funny creating terms for tagging other people.
Yes.
The cyber clarias, or the cyber worms, or whatever. And you see those positions very polarized, But in between, there is you and me. There is many people with different approaches, but with the same purpose. Let's create a better country, a better
Agree.
place for us to live. And I think that the Cuban government is in a crossroad
Hmm.
because it had to take into account what people think, um, and it had to incorporate people in the decision making process.
Agree.
Also, this protest will bring, I'm sure it will bring changes, very important
Hmm.
changes. Like I said in my class, for example, the electoral system in Cuba must change, and it will, one way or the other. If those in power today don't change it, people will make it to happen.
Right.
Okay, people don't want any more indirect elections, and then in 2018, I think that most of the Cuban people gave the guy a blank check, but it
Right.
was the last. Okay, it was the last one,
Yeah.
and I think we are reaching that point. The whole structure must be changed. It no longer work, and it had to be changed. And changes are coming one way or the other. I rather, like I said in my class, I rather be the one formatting the hard drive and reinstalling a new system, because it is going to happen no matter what. It's going to happen.
Right. I agree. I agree, and I think that's why my position has been, as a matter of fact, I'm a part of a new group in Facebook that's called Archipelago, which there's a lot of different variety of people, and thinking, and I enjoy that because I believe that's the only way that we're going to get somewhere, is when we come together, when we express and we debate and we express each other's opinion, and we have to get the best out of every person, because I believe every single Cuban wants the best for Cuba, regardless of what position they're in, ideologically. Um, and one of the things that my husband and I have been thinking of is how to make, and I hate using this word nowadays because these bridges, um, as you know, are not very popular in our community nowadays. But we need to make those bridges, and with the different, I believe, on different professional sectors. I would love to see, let's say, the finance people, come together in a group, people from here, and people, Cubans from here and Cubans from inside, where we can help each other, give each other ways of maybe bettering their society today. Because I believe, you know, since Cuba has stopped in time, you know, they don't have the resources necessary to be up to date with, the world. And I think it's important, how I believe that how we can help as Cubans from an outside perspective, because I can't tell people inside Cuba what to do. All I can do is to show them this is how we do it, and perhaps they can learn something from how things are done in my profession. Or let's say they learn something about how people are doing something in the agricultural sector, from agricultural people in, here in the US, or teachers or doctors or whatever that could be. And I would like to see those bridges being done, because I think that's the only way um, that we can get to a future together. I dream. I have a dream like Martin Luther King.
Yeah. Yeah.
I dream of this happening, in our near future, and who knows?
Definitely. Um, it's good that what you just brought. First of all, I believe in bridges. Actually, in 2014, I did my first. I made my first documentary, and it was about that, a bridge in the mirror, because for many years I've built a bridge between Cuban and the U.S. people by bringing students to Cuba and bringing scholars to the U.S.
Mhm.
Without any brainwash or whatever, and
Right.
even having to challenge the intolerance in both sides and the suspicious and so on. It's interesting because it marked my life in many ways. um, because of what I was doing, I was able to meet congressmen, senators, relevant political personalities in the U.S.
Mhm.
Um, I never let that any intolerant person in Cuba call me an agent of the U.S. government. You know,
Yes.
and
Right.
I always compromise my personal positions and my beliefs, and I
Right.
really believe in the understanding between both peoples.
I agree.
So now I see the controversial, what the whole controversy
Right.
with a guy who did something similar and tried to build it. Actually, he got more guts that I could have, because I
I
never I never
I don't
went
think
politics.
it's
I
similar.
never went public.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I would like to talk with all the actors involved in the conflict.
Right.
I would like to hear what do they have to say. And
Right.
uh, look, well, we're friends. I mean,
Yeah.
we will talk no matter what, because we love each other. Okay, I mean that's it's completely settled.
Yeah.
But try to imagine if I refuse to talk to you because I don't agree with what you say or so, or then I mean I think we need to move on away from the tax.
I
Okay,
I,
it's
I agree. But again, Umberto, there's a lot. As you know, I came in 1980 through the Marielle. You've heard my story. And
yes,
like me, there are many, many, many Cubans that have suffered, tremendously. And we need to also have a heart, for those people as well, because I was able to move on. I was able to, leave the past in the past, even though it was hard. This is something that marked my entire life forever. I still have remnants of, the tortures that I was put through. And so, when you talk to a mother whose son was killed, a a daughter whose father was imprisoned for so many years and then shot, and you hear all these stories that are devastating. I put myself in their shoes as well. And as I try to put myself, and I always look at life with, or try, not, it doesn't always work. We make mistakes, but I always try to look at life with God's, glasses, and say to myself, how would Jesus feel about this certain situation? And I have empathy for the people that have suffered. I also have empathy for the people that are suffering today in Cuba, um, because there's much suffering happening today. Lives are being, for, to me, it was devastating when I saw in the newspaper that, in April of 2012, in the middle of a pandemic, Cuba decided to purchase 1.2 million dollars in, in weapons and things, instead of going out from Spain, instead of going out and buying medications and things that were needed for the country in the middle of a pandemic. To me, that just doesn't make sense, because you need to take care of your people first and foremost. Now, I don't understand the reasons behind it. I think that if I was be going to be explained the reasons behind it, I would probably still not understand it, because to me, the health care and the health of your population should have come first. So there was no excuses for this, and I understand that perhaps some people might think differently. I know, like in the U.S., we have a huge military budget, yes, but we also have a huge, you know, we take care of, our when the pandemic came, that was priority for both President Trump and the current administration. So it doesn't matter whether they were Democrats or Republicans. You know, their priority was to get the vaccines, get the respirators, get all the medication and everything that the population needed. And I don't see that, that mentality in Cuba. I don't see them, uh, thinking about the people first, and that hurts. That hurts me, and it hurts many Cubans that are outside of Cuba that have already suffered, because we've suffered in the past, and now we see the suffering of our people because of the same government. Um, that it's hard. It's very hard. But I'm hoping that one day, things will heal. I think, people are starting to come together. I feel people are starting to have conversations, and and I don't know. I'm hopeful. I am. I'm not. I'm never going to lose hope. That's just
Yeah,
who I am.
yeah. That's something we have in common. Hope, the ability to be in someone else choose, understanding other people's life. Like I said before, when I met this guy in Charleston, first
Yeah.
reaction was to hug him and said, "I apologize," even though I didn't have to do anything with that.
Right.
I've met a lot of people because, I mean, again, the history have been very intense. People have had impacts in their life. People have suffered both sides. My friend, Tim Carlos Cremata, his father was in the plane and shut down in 1976.
Right.
He he doesn't have any remorse. He doesn't have any hatred.
Right.
Actually, he created a company of children to just sing and be ambassadors of cultures. I think they're examples both sides in which that's my point in move on.
Yeah.
Not forgetting. Okay,
Right.
not forgetting. I can't forget, because if I forget it, it happens again.
Right.
But I have to forgive and move on. I
Yeah.
get, because it's assumed zero.
I
If
agree.
if if part of the problem is that both sides of the strait, people are blaming each other. You did this, I did this. No, you know what? What is done is done. We have to remember it. We have to record it, so we don't have it again.
Right.
Okay, and then uh, I don't know. I think it's a perfect storm because it's too many things together.
Yeah.
The government has a lot of flaws there. Again, structural problems provoking what is happening. Like I said in my class, in the last 2 years, most of the investments were to the sector of um,
Tourism.
tourism and real estate, and it decreased a lot of the investments in healthcare. Of course, it's going to have an impact. Okay,
Mhm.
of course it will. Uh, I think again, people are above the institutions.
Right.
Institutions must be servant of the people, not the other way.
Right.
So I think the people in Cuba, in all their diversity, uh, is trying to correct that anomaly. And what matters for the Cuban is to support the correction of that anomaly, preserving the integrity of the territory. Because finally, we are all Cubans.
Right.
We want to come back and forth.
Right.
We want to be part of the process. We want to be part of the process of making
Oh, I lost you again.
we all have a little Martin Luther King inside, and we all have a dream. In Cuba, one thing I love in the Cuban nature is the lyrics and the dreaming part of the Cubans. We're dreamers.
Right.
We always try to build
Hmm.
uh, and we're very stubborn in our dreams because uh, a positive side, a good collateral effect of what is happening after July 11 and previously to it is phenomenon. The Cuban immigrants are the only ones in the world. It doesn't matter if they're citizens on whatever they are.
Right.
They keep their concern about the island.
Yeah.
They want to
And
do
it's
something, you know.
transferred from generation to generation. I mean,
Yeah.
my daughters, what my three children were born here in the United States, as you know, and they feel for Cuba. They've gone out to marches. They've gone out on their own. They are posting about SOS Cuba, and this is because they have I have been able to transfer this on. And I've seen, because my grandparents passed it on to me, and I will pass it on to my granddaughter, you know, because that love for our country never ends. And that, I think, is a positive thing. I agree. And I want to end with that positivity.
Yes.
Because I don't want to take any more of your time. You have been wonderful, and I thank you for this time. It's almost been an hour and a half, so I really do. And if there's anything else you want to tell the audience, please you're more than welcome. Um,
Well, first, thank you again. Thank you beyond any formality. It's always a pleasure
it's been a
to
great
be around you
conversation.
and Guillermo. Second, I mean, the last uh, building. Building is the way.
Yeah.
Building is the path we need to follow. It's very easy. Building costs your life, but it's very easy. And yes, I want to build something better, and I want to be with you in that construction.
Well, I think we need to make room for everyone to be a part of it. I think we need to make room
Yeah,
for every single Cuban to be a part of the future of our country, regardless of where we end up living. I don't see myself living back in
yeah,
the island. I have built, as you know, we've built a life here. I'm gonna have a grandchild soon. So I don't see myself in the future Cuba living there, but I think I would love to be a part of the building of a new Cuba, and helping in any way I can. And I think that's why I started this this channel, so that people we can have these conversations. And I've had conversations with many people inside and out of the island, and I think this is at least a little bit of a contribution that I'm doing. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Un abrazo.
Igualmente, do you have any social media? Is there anything coming up that you want to share with the audience? Do you have you don't have any more classes coming up that you're doing?
Not so far. As soon as I have it, I'll let you know and I'll
Oh,
share with you.
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm
Anytime that
happy.
we can, let me know. Send me all the information, and we'll put it out on all the social media.
Okay.
Thank you, Humberto, from the bottom of my
Thank
heart. Thank
you.
you again. Okay, bye bye. Well, everybody, thank you for joining me again. Thank you for this hour and a half that we've had. I know we've had some technical issues, but I'm glad that some of you have still are with me. I want to take the opportunity to thank my friend Nancy Martinez. She actually brought these to me and this bracelet from Ecuador. She's lovable and always bringing me stuff when she goes back to her country. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank her. I want to thank each and every one of you for standing by me. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so. Please share this conversation. I feel that it is important for these conversations to continue to happen, not just about Cuba, but about everything. And we need to continue to have these types of conversations with our friends, with our families, and respectfully listen to each other. That is the way of the future. Thank you all so much for standing by. Have a great day. I will see you next week.